This is Big Man Tyrone, and you're about to watch the MtG Cabal cast with your hosts, Woad, Thirsty, and Reptar. Sub to us on all your podcast networks at MtG Cabal Cast and YouTube.
All right, hey guys, welcome to the new episode of the Cabal Cast. Sorry for the delay. I was in Kansas City for the first Midwest GP in forever.
Yep.
But we've got a good episode planned for you today. It's about that time of year where last year we started to see the old school boom and the RL bubble. So we're actually going to be talking about what each of us thinks the next big MTG finance, like surge or explosion, is going to be.
Yep.
And then we'll send it away with picks. So keeping it pretty easy. Going to digest Modern Horizons spoilers and this new London Mulligan rule change a little bit more before we cover it in an episode. So let's get started.
One thing I believe in is that Unlimited is underpriced as a set. I think across the board, Unlimited is criminally underpriced as a set. You look at Alpha and you look at Beta, and they have a decent spread in what you would expect for a set that represents the beginning of the game and then the kind of collector set in Beta. Like, a lot of people like to collect Alpha, but Beta is really the collector set. And you have a lot of price deltas there of about 2x between Alpha and Beta, and that's pretty standard across the board. When it comes to Unlimited, the gap is a lot larger between Beta and Unlimited. And we do see an increased print run that kind of reflects this, but not one that reflects a delta like I'll show. I do think the namesake cards in the set, like Power and the Duels, are underpriced. Our Eternal Playables are underpriced, but not by the margins that I'm going to cover today. They are all due for another pop at some point in the next year. And if you look at the charts, you'll see over the past couple of years, they've gone up maybe about 1.5x in price just in the last couple of years alone, as they catch up and other people realize that there's a demand here and you can raise these prices. But what I'm looking at are Eternal Staples, Eternal Playables, and not just between a format like Old School and EDH. I'm looking at cards that are played in Vintage, in Legacy, and EDH, and in some cases Modern, because they're legal there.
It's like Swords to Plowshares, Disenchant, Shatter, stuff like that.
Bolt, yes.
Yep.
All these namesake cards. You can dive deeper and look at things like Script Sprites, and you will see a large delta there. But that card is really only Old School playable. It's not in other formats. It's just like Sarah Angel. That card has a real price, but a seemingly large delta, but it's only played in Old School. So I don't like to kind of consider it when I look at these cards. So the first one I'm going to bring up all the way at the beginning over here is Red Elemental Blast. This is one of the first cards that I actually went in on years ago. Not in an overly large quantity, but I picked up my Alpha, my Beta, and my Unlimited when they were all very cheap. Beta, as you can see, up until about Ixalan, sat at about $25. Now it is market about $40. Now Unlimited, which has the same color saturation, is about $3.25. So you're looking at a 10x between Beta and Unlimited. And while we are looking at a common, we're going to continue down the line and see other commons who have a much higher price floor for their Unlimited counterpart compared to Beta. But this is a card that is playable in all the formats I talked about, except for Modern, because it just is not legal there. And this is a card that does demand attention. It is playable. It looks just as good in Unlimited as it does in Beta because of that color saturation that I mentioned. It just doesn't have the black border, so it doesn't have that kind of collectability behind it. When you look at a card like Red Elemental Blast, you're not looking at a card that really is a barrier to entry into Old School, outside of, like I said, keep discounting Power and Duels, right? If you just wanted to play the Goblin deck, for instance, you would go with Unlimited Red Elemental Blast because they're $3 a piece as opposed to the $30 that you're spending on the Betas. Next one I'm going to bring up is Lightning Bolt, and this one's ridiculous because it's Lightning Bolt. Now, the problem we have with Lightning Bolt is that the average on this is 300, while the market on this is only about 115. And these are numbers that we talked about a couple of weeks ago that you can game on TCG Player, because average is based on listing price, market is based on last number of X quantity sold. And the unlimited copy of Lightning Bolt is priced much like its brethren from M10. It is a $19 card. The M10 version is about 4 or 5, and there's no reason for this. It's still the original Christopher Rush art. The text on it is just as big and bold and brash as it is on the beta version. It just does not have the black border. There's no reason for this 5 times delta. This should probably be more like a $35 or $40 card in time.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to play Modern, you're probably not going to be taking your beta bolts out anyway because it's a Modern event. I just picked up 4 GP bolts that I'll be playing. The new GP bolts, not the old one, because I don't like to foil my decks. But when I play Legacy, I bring out my beta bolts. That's just how you do.
Yeah.
Right? And to quickly run down the line, another big one is Swords to Plowshare. This is another one where we see a huge delta in market and average, and we see about a 2x gap, 325 for market, 600 for average. But when we look at Unlimited, it's a $33 card. This is a 10x multiplier, again, 20x if you believe the market. Sorry, the average. Again, same art, same coloration, same mana symbol, because they did change the plane symbol in time.
Yeah.
As its Unlimited equivalent. It's still the original art. Some people prefer this, some people prefer the Ice Age art, some people prefer the yoke, and you're wrong.
They are.
And it looks just as good. This is, again, playable in every format it is legal in. It's played.
Yeah.
And it is not the barrier to entry for Old School in the White Weenie deck. I think Savannah Lions, ironically, is if you're not buying Revised.
Yeah.
And then we move down the line a little more. We look at a recent reprint in Llanowar Elves because I wanted to hit a card of every color besides blue, because that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the graph on Llanowar Elves is a little more interesting, but that's because it just got a reprint in Dominaria. So the beta version did shoot up to 80, but it did not maintain. And we're actually seeing an average price well below market. So that means demand has been sated, and they're just out there on the market. Black Border Llanowar Elves are always in demand. It does not matter if they are English, if they're foreign, Black Border, what have you. The Unlimited version is $7, and this is the only one that makes sense because of what I mentioned. People like Black Border, Llanowar Elves, they have forever. It's really the only one of these that I've ever heard anybody be a stickler about. But again, we're looking at a 10x delta. I think that should be shored up and should be about a 5x delta. Maybe a little less for Llanowar Elves because it really is only a Modern staple right now. There are so many cards that do the same thing in Legacy and better that the 1/1 for 1 green that taps for a green slot is just non-essential to the Elves deck.
Yeah. Priest of Titania is a pretty good card, I've heard.
Yeah, and Heritage Druid, the one that taps for 3 Elves. Yeah.
Yep.
You have better options is what I'm getting at. And the last one I'm going to bring up, Beta Dark Rit. So we see a hard spike to 200. The price is not maintainable because the demand just doesn't exist. So eventually the average price floats back down to the market, and they meet at about $120. Dark Ritual is a card that was printed all the way up until Masks block. Different art every time after 4th edition. And the Unlimited edition is $9. So again, we're looking at about a 12x delta on this, which should not be the case. If you're the kind of person who plays Storm and Legacy, you want a Black Border at your deck, I understand that. Every other edition of this, aside from Unlimited and Revised, is Black Border. It's just the way it is. You know, because it was in the expansion sets, the expert level sets.
Yeah,
it was all printed in there, so it has a Black Border. But this is still a collector's card, and Unlimited is still a much more limited print run than all the sets that came after it. And you're looking at kind of this bygone era of art, especially with the way the border, the colors, and the artist credit are. You're looking at a card that's much more concise, and everything is actually kind of larger on it than its newer brethren. And these are the kind of cards that I look at, especially when I'm out at random shops and just trading. I look for Unlimited cards that should hold a price but don't. There's no reason why they shouldn't. Eventually people are going to stop collecting beta. Either it'll just disappear or it'll become too expensive for a lot of people. So they'll go back to the next version that has the next bit of true art. And you're going to look at Unlimited. And it doesn't matter if it's regular or dark unlimited, which there's still a handful of things floating around. And the delta on a lot of these cards is way too large and unsustainable moving forward. We saw that reserve list pop years ago, and it continues. It'll keep going. And those cards are never going to get reprinted. Everything I've touched on here is non-reserve list. It can and will be reprinted. We saw Llanowar Elves and Dominaria. We saw Red Elemental Blast in Eternal Masters.
A25, I think. Eternal Masters was Pyro and Hydro.
Okay, yeah. We haven't seen Dark Writ in forever, and Swords is supplementally printed all the time.
Yep.
So, original art, original color, original monosymbols, original font size, original frame, original bordering for the cards themselves, just not in black border. There's no reason for a delta upwards of 20x for some of these. And it's the same down the line for all the rest of these cards. Things like Basalt Monolith, I think, have a smaller delta, but that's because they are using weird, janky combos, like just mill combos.
Yeah.
And so those are a lot closer. I think Shatter's still a wide delta, but it's a card I didn't bring up. It's a card I did think about. And you just look at cards like that, and you just think, this card is playable in one or multiple formats, including an up to Modern. I was going to bring up Disenchant for that reason, but I just wanted to cover a handful. And this is, for a lot of people, this is as pimp as they can or want to go, and these cards are still incredibly affordable. Why is there a flood of them in the market? It's just, people play with fourth and revised instead. One, that doesn't make sense. And two, this is just one of those things where it will dry up in time. Unlimited is going to go. It's going to be harder and harder to find. It's just going to be a matter of people wanting to turn their focus to Unlimited away from Alpha and Beta and just say, all right, it's time. We're just going to clear out the market. And you can see that happening with Beta commons and uncommons, 3 or 4 years ago? All this stuff that we see.
2, 3, 4, something like that, And it's interesting you say that, because I was actually, at the GP, I was discussing how over the last, 6 months, we saw Unlimited Lotuses have the explosion of almost 2xing, similar to what Alpha and Beta Lotuses had prior to the RL boom. And then you had the rest of the power from those sets catch up.
Yeah.
And then you had the rares, and then the commons and uncommons. So, I mean, I'm not sure what you would think timeline on this, but if it happens, I would expect it in probably about 12 to 18 months. Something like that, just based on how it's been with Alpha and Beta.
I think so. I've been saying Power for years. Power's been underpriced, and now it's finally kicking up. I brought up in one of our Discords, I think it was last week, that 2 pieces of Power increased in price by 25% in 7 days, according to multiple, conglomeration of multiple sources, led to the fact that certain pieces of Power had increased by 25%, and I think that's finally happening. We're finally seeing Power creep up. The duels have been going up in time. The stragglers in Plateau and Savannah, those guys are catching up. Eventually, the unlimited rares will go, and once people realize that, then the commons are going to be next to be swept out. That's what happened with Beta. People just went this is a collector's set. We just have to move on these rares now, or we're never going to get them. They disappeared. The commons went. It was a matter of time. I don't think this is something that necessarily happens when there's a boom in alternative currencies like crypto. That pushed up high-end reserve list staples. That didn't really coincide with the beta buyouts of just general rares. Not like Shiv and Dragon kind of rares, but not Cyclopean Tomb. I can't think of a shitty rare from beta, but they're out there. That did not coincide. So I don't know what's going to be the driver on this, because I don't have my hands in that many jars, but we will see it. And a lot of these graphs do prove that these cards are moving in time. The Dark Ritual graph that I brought up has it spiking from about $3 at Dominaria release to the $9 it's worth right now. So some of these cards are moving. They're already on the move. What could push these kind of multi-format staples along would be if Star City Games had more legacy events, if the Bazaar Moxen started up their series again, if MKM pushed harder on their legacy series, if WotC put up another couple legacy Magic Fests. I know. A boy can dream.
We can dream, boy can dream, exactly,
Then we'll see a lot of these staples take off, and once they go, they're never coming back, and then you'll see the jank come up. Things that either are just played in old school, like I mentioned, script sprites, or stuff that's played nowhere, like Grizzly Bears. Then you'll see that kind of stuff go up. But this is like my long haul, bet. This is what like I said, whenever I go out to certain shops, I always go for unlimited over anything else, and I always pull cards that I know are played or are playable in multiple formats. A card like Disenchant, while it's not played in Modern, has the ability to be played in Modern.
Yeah.
So that's what I look for right now with this. This is my opinions on the matter.
Yeah. I'm very much, for me, and it's something I've thought about for a while. And then when we decided we were going to go for this topic, I was like, all right, let me do a little bit of research. And I snap-yesed it.
Yep.
For me, it's reserve list foils. So obviously we had the reserve list boom already, and there are a number of reserve list foils. There's only 2 foil sets on the reserve list. Mm-hmm. Destiny and Legacy.
Yes.
That's it. So there's 2 sets with foils. Obviously, we have like Grim Monolith is ridiculous. Academy Rector, Replenish, like those staples are insane.
Yep.
And I started looking into some other cards, and like, similar to you going through the different colors, the 2 that really stuck out to me were actually Multani Marrow Sorcerer and Radiant Archangel. Now, the reason those specifically stuck out is because they're reserve list legends that have foil printings. So for EDH, that seems ridiculous.
Yep.
Low right now on LP Foil Radiance is $72.
Wow.
Market is $100. So they haven't been moving. Multani market is $90. LP low for foils is $55.
Jeez.
So Multani hasn't moved in ages.
No.
And it's an EDH card. Like it's a legend. And both of them are not only able to be generals, they're in the color of the general that fetches legends in Captain Sisay.
Oh, yeah.
And then you've got Second Chance for blue, I thought, would be after the Heliod thing that got spoiled in Modern Horizons. We saw a huge spike all of a sudden in the non-foils for Second Chance. Mm-hmm. LP low is about $60. And these are, again, they're reserve lists. They're not going to get printed again. Some of them are very powerful, unique effects. Opalescence is down to $90 again, when for the longest time it was like $140 to $150. And you won't see these printed ever again. Foils from this era also just don't exist. Your average back then for a foil rare was 0.7 per box, mm-hmm. which is ridiculous because now we're so spoiled with the new insertion that you get 2 mythics in most boxes that are foil. And it's just unheard of. So, there's cards like Powder Keg as well, which is kind of, outclassed by Ratchet Bomb, Pernicious Deed. There's plenty of stuff there. But the reserved list, it was an iconic card. It's $65 for foil. And in addition to just being reserve list star foils, the one thing that counterfeits haven't been able to really get close to getting right is foils.
Nope. Not Old Border, at least.
Yeah, definitely not Old Border. And that's kind of niche, but to me, that's another argument for the collectability of these cards, because the authenticity is there. You know that they don't have anywhere near perfect fakes or even anything approaching reasonable fakes.
Yeah. And
then you have cards like Negator. This is one of the most iconic creatures in the history of Magic.
Oh, yeah, Phyrexian Negator.
It's $49 for LP low.
That seems...
And market's $60.
For a card that is in middle school and...
Pre-modern and, like, it seems ridiculous, right? For that card to have that type of price.
Oh, yeah.
And, the liquidity isn't necessarily there when you get them, but the fact that these haven't moved in so long... And the market still indicates that, we're at the old prices last year from the reserve list boom, to me says that this is a good opportunity to get in on this. Like this weekend, I picked up, I think, 4 Multanis, 2 Radiants, about 6 Weatherseed Treefolk, and 1 or 2 other cards. Mm-hmm. Covetous Dragon, the only red card on the reserve list that has a foil. And it's incredibly iconic because Kai Bood won a Pro Tour with it. So...
Oh, yeah, that was like the only mono red deck he's ever played.
Yep, that Wildfire list with like Dynamos and Monoliths.
Yep.
And it's not necessarily like, again, the liquidity isn't necessarily there. But I think it's very easy to see like a 2 to 3x on these within the next 2 years. I mean, Weatherseed Tree Folk is a $30 low foil.
Yeah.
It's reserved list, it's foil. There's reserve list cards worth more than that are way worse and aren't foil. So I think they're just a really good opportunity, especially if you can get some with like the EDH utility, like Radiant Multani, Second Chance, Covetous Dragon. Yeah, stuff like that you can see, okay, this has that level of utility to it. Those are the things that I think we'll start to see, and I think it's going to be a bit more of a slow burn than the unlimited one. I think that one probably happens sooner.
Yeah.
If this happens, if reserve list foils do pop, and I think you'll see a little bit of a bump this summer because this is when all the funny market stuff happens because of, the secret insider MTG finance or whatever the kids are talking about these days because we're all evil assholes. This is when you'll start to see a few shades of that. And then come Eternal Weekend, if we have a middle school or pre-modern event there, you're going to see some of this stuff shoot up.
Yep. Anything that's played. Yeah.
Yeah, and anything that's played. And I just think it's almost too obvious to me that I don't understand why it hasn't happened yet. Because some of the reserve list stuff is just like, all right, I get Oubliette being $100 or whatever ridiculous price it is. It's a pauper card. It's also not reserve list. But then you have things like, I don't know, Gaia's Avenger or whatever. I paid like $15 for one of those this weekend that was in really good condition. I'm like, this card doesn't even see old school play.
No,
why?
Yeah, that's a good example. Wall of Kelp is another one.
Yeah.
Wall of Kelp is now like a $7 card played in no decks on EDH Rec. Like, cool. Arcades made that thing playable. Does it need to have a price? No.
No, not at all. And seeing some of the stuff that has spiked and stayed. So yeah, Near Mint Gaia's Avenger is $40. And why? Okay, whatever, guys.
Yep.
Power to you.
I think Lurker is another one of those cards that people are like, oh, this just goes in the mono green deck when you play mono green in old school. I'm like, no, Lurker is still not good. Eater of Days, still not good.
Yeah. It's just not the type of thing that I think should go unnoticed, but it seems to have so far.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of that market is people who have the money that want to pimp. So that's why cards like Rector and Replenish are extremely hard to find now, despite the fact that Replenish is only like a 2-year-old spike.
Yeah.
It kind of coincided with Sarah Sanctum. Like when that went up, Replenish went up.
Yeah.
But a lot of these other cards won't go until all the playable reserve list foils are gone. Once those are gone and people look at the star foils and say, well, what can I pick up that isn't from 7th edition that looks good? It's going to be cards that are going to be either on the reserve list or pseudo reserve list because they're not coming back. You're not going to get that look again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it seems pretty opportune. Especially, while we're slow, people aren't really paying attention to it. They're focused on modern horizons and everything that's going on in general. It's just a really good spot to get in on this. And I think very likely and very realistically, like, make a decent bit of money.
Yeah.
So
definitely. And a lot of this stuff isn't really being watched by people. If you were to go and make a move on Powder Keg, that would probably turn some heads quickly. But if you win on Covetous Dragon, people probably aren't going to notice it. So you can kind of lurk under the water for a very long time and nibble away at this market.
And I actually do know someone local in St. Louis, which if any of you listening to this are from St. Louis, you know who I'm talking about, who literally has already gone in on Covetous Dragon because he's like, look, this is, I'm going to spend like $1,000 on getting all the ones I can for less than $100.
Yeah.
And okay, he did. And we have them back out there and they're still $50. So. Yeah.
And like you said, eventually they're just going to disappear. The prices will go up, and that resets the floor. And now you're looking at cards that have like 1.5 to 2x easily, just because of now this is a market. Now people want to be in this market. that you've just created kind of this awkward demand for something that people didn't know there was a demand for. And
Yeah.
I like the idea of the Starfoil stuff. We were talking about pseudo reserve lists as well in Discord.
Yeah.
And we talked about Tanglewire and Smokestack as examples, looking
Yeah.
outside of the reserve list as cards that were not just pseudo reserve lists, but in that era. So Urza's block was the first block with foils, then Mask's block, then 7th, and then the percentages and everything kind of went up a little bit from there.
Yeah.
It's moved into somewhere around Onslaught block, and there's just this weird mystique about those Starfoils from back then, the way things were handled, and just their overall population.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty dope.
Yeah, I just think it's a good opportunity. So that's what I picked. So, let's I guess that's all I have to say. So let's send it off with picks. What you got?
All right, so I took a little bit to figure this out. I was waffling on a bunch of cards, and then only after I bought my 8 copies did I decide Eladamri's Call was well underpriced for the A25 version specifically.
Yeah.
Not Plane Shift. I think Plane Shift holds its value properly. That was at one point a $10 to $12 card, and I think it will crest back up there. If it's in a combo deck, you got it. All you. That's probably gonna be 15 plus. Masters 2.5 when I chose the card was about 4 and change, and you can see it on the graph. A little under 5. I think when I purchased them, people were racing to the bottom of TCG Player.
Yeah.
And this is a brand new tutor to Modern. This is, I don't know why, it seems like WotC's replacement for Worldly Tutor.
Yeah.
We did not get a Worldly Tutor reprint in that master set alongside Enlightened and Mystical for some reason. They just don't acknowledge that card exists. It's a $15 uncommon. It puts a card to the top of your deck.
It's bad.
It is possibly the worst green tutor you have. And I'm sure somebody's going to point out something from Portal.
Sylvan Tutor. It's Sorcery Speed Worldly Tutor.
Fair enough.
Got him.
Yeah, right there. Shit. And Eladamri's Call for 2 mana is an unrestricted tutor. Just search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put it in your hand. End of story. So you just EOT, get your combo piece, next turn untap, play it with protection if you want. You don't have to worry about paying 4 for Collected Company and hopefully spiking your piece. You don't have to worry about paying X and 2 green for your finale and overpaying for it. You get this in 2 stages. And this opens up not just the counter company deck a little more. It kind of doesn't really revitalize Kiki Cord, but this is a card that goes in there because that is basically a Nea deck splash blue for Glenelendra Archmage.
Yeah.
You might start to see just green-white aggressive decks pop up again because this gets your bullets. Guaranteed. Just like Court of Calling. Unlike Collected Company. Then I think they also released another tutor alongside this. Something... maybe I'm just thinking Finale again. But this is one of the best tutors we now have for green-white in Modern. This also had eternally EDH playable. That's why this card has a price on it of $5 right now, $10 prior to its free fall at Rivals of Ixalan for some reason, well before it was announced that was an A25. And the moment this card hits in Modern, that's it. It's going to go right back up again. So this, for me, is a long-term hold because you've got to wait for that, or you just have to wait for supply to be drained, which I think will happen. This kind of pushes the card back up to the forefront. A lot of people might have just forgotten that this was a card, and now you have new eyes on it again after A25. And I think this pushes it. Just for reference, this is in 13% of the 48,000 decks in the green-white X color scheme on EDH Rec, if I'm reading this graph correctly.
Yeah.
It's
a good card.
This is not a sub $5 card for forever. Unless they continue to reprint it, which they could, and then at that point, we're all hoisted by my petard.
Yeah.
But I've secured my Plane Shift copies because I like the way that card looks, but I think A25 is the place to be right now. It should have less supply than Modern Horizons. It's the same art, the same border, the same foil stamp, the exact same card, just in lesser supply. That's the one I think is going to go up more. Respect. Yeah, obviously. And that's where I'm sticking for this week.
That's fair. I think that's a good one. I think it helps fair decks way more than it helps the unfair ones, because the unfair ones will just run Neoform.
Yeah.
But I think it's solid.
Yeah.
Mine is Cascading Cataracts. So when this card first got printed, and this is the like Prism tap 5,
Yes.
create Wooburg. I forget what the old one was. Crystal Quarry.
Yep. From
Crystal,
Odyssey or whatever.
Crystal Quarry foils were like $60 before this card got printed, and the non-foils were like 20. And then Cascading Cataracts gets printed, and it's most importantly indestructible. Tap, add a colorless 5, add any combination of 5 mana to your mana pool. Now, in addition to just being a better version of a reprint that had a lot of value in EDH, we just got a card which allows you to pay Wooburg for everything in Modern Horizons, which is going to be an EDH All-Star. Or Joda's there. We've got plenty of ways to cast spells with this.
All the bringers.
Yeah, all that stuff. So the foils are still less than $5. The non-foils, low, is under $1. And this is, yet again, a slow burn, as tends to be my thing. I think, though, within like 2 years, this easily hits a $3 to $5 for the non-foil, and we see a 10 to 15 for the foil.
Yep.
It's just not an effect that I think can stay that cheap for long, especially as we get more commander sets, as we get more ridiculous supplemental product with changelings or, stuff like Joda gets printed.
I mean, for whatever reason, the Dragon's deck was 5 color.
Yeah. Sure. And I think that, what's really telling to me is that we had Joda in a standard set. So it's not the type of effect that they necessarily think should be restricted to supplemental product, which I thought for a long time was going to be the case, because since basically Fifth Dawn, when we had like Fist of the Suns and all that stuff, we hadn't seen anything that affected Wooburg. No. It just didn't exist. And then a couple years later, they're like, okay, we're going to try this in standard. Have at it.
Yep.
And I just think it's a really underpriced card. Now, we did see a little bit of a spike, it looks like, on the 27th, which was, of course, when we had Changeling Dude, whatever his name is, spoiled.
Joda. Or sorry, Morophon. Yeah,
Morophon. Yeah, that one. And I think that's, we'll see this periodically. When we get cards that interact with it, it's only going to get more favorable. And multicolor is hot. Look at Guilds of Ravnica. Look at Shards of Alara. It's a mechanic that sells well. They produce unintentionally powerful effects in it because they don't know what they're doing. And I just think it's a card that is not just underpriced, but we're at such a weird point with Amonkhet right now. The whole block was basically regarded as hot trash.
Yep.
It wasn't really opened. We just started to see sealed rebound, and I think that because it wasn't really opened, there's a lot of sealed products sitting out there that now we're starting to see recover because of invocations. And I don't see people necessarily, opening it to get these invocations. They're obviously going to, sell it. And sell it sealed, sorry. So I think it's just a really good opportunity. And looking at EDH Rec, it's in a bunch of first sliver decks. Joda has 516 decks.
Yep.
It's in 20% of him. He is by far the most popular Wooburg commander, and he's in a full, fifth of them.
Yep. The one I think we might pick up looking at this list, discounting slivers, is actually Niv Mizzet.
Yeah.
The new one. I know Star City Versus had him on. I think they actually put him in a standard deck. It wasn't the commander stuff. But people have been working with him, and it's been taking a while. And it's going to continue to take a while. But once they really figure out how to make a Niv Mizzet Reborn work, that I think he's going to take off as a Wooburg general more so than he is right now.
Yeah, and it's, looking at even Joda and Najila, which for those of you that follow CEDH, she's considered one of the better Wooburg generals that isn't Tazri. She's in 15% of 300 decks. Or, sorry, Cascading Cataracts is in 15% of her 300 decks.
Yep.
So it's something that there's momentum there, it's been, let's see, we have what, 5 creatures printed in the last year
With Wooburg.
with Wootberg that interact with it.
Yep.
So it's something that they're clearly embracing and starting to be like, all right, we're all in, we're going to go for it.
Yep.
So I think it just has a lot of upside for sub $1. And if it ends up being bulk, yeah, it sucks because it's bulk, but you paid bulk on it. So it's
I
not the
don't
worst thing in
think
the
so.
world.
Not based on Crystal Quarry, but based on Nykthos. Like these supplemental lands, just tick forever. Nykthos is different, obviously, because it has modern implications. It's in the elf deck, and it is masterful in monocolor decks or even 2 colors that are slanted heavily towards one other. But these lands that are obviously EDH playable eventually just dry up. People just pick them up. Like, I could probably use Cataracts. It's sub $5. Yeah. Why wouldn't I?
Yeah, and they just fill out trades with it, and then all of a sudden they forget they have 40 of them.
Yeah. But this is a card that when I saw it, I was like, this is perfectly EDH playable, and I vacuumed up a bunch of copies, and I honestly forgot about it. I haven't seen it in binders in a very long time, and that's not a testament to playability, etc. Just Amonkhet dried up around here. Basically, people sold out, and that was that. Yeah. I just think this is a card like Crystal Quarry that will tick around forever. This also adds mana in any combination, so you can play it in your 2-color decks and make 3 and 2 or 4 and 1, whatever you want. It is perfectly fine there as well. If you're playing,
it filters your rocks.
Yeah, I'm just trying to. EDH Rec, actually, their cast last week was about monocolor generals and how casting cards with trip of a pip in it, like Genesis Wave, in a 2-color deck, 2-color plus deck can be difficult. Cascading Cataracts allows you to fix that. You can filter all your red through Cascading Cataracts to make green, and cast your Genesis Wave like that. This is a card that is playable in any number of decks from 1 color onward, although I don't know why you played in 1.
Yeah.
But I also forgot I was indestructible.
Yeah, the indestructible is pretty big, I think. To me, it's the big thing that, obviously, it's the only thing really besides the mana combination that separates it from Crystal Quarry. But that's an insane upside because it really does open up a lot of options for deck building. And, at the higher end tables, you'll see a lot of strip mines, you'll see a lot of wastelands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
I like Cascading Cataracts. The foil is beautiful. If you haven't seen it, look it up. It is not quite as heinous as that desert with the explosion on it, but it is. It's good. So, would recommend both this card and checking out the foil. But that is it for us this week, guys. We pulled our winner for our giveaway, which was a Modern Horizons box. So if you are not a member of our Patreon, you might want to think about that because we will be doing these. And as we are still running our regular raffle, once we hit 100 patrons, we will be raffling off UMA box. And
with topper.
Yes. Just sealed in its entirety, shipped from Argus's house to yours. And... with that, I am at Halt I Am Reptar on Twitter.
I am at Thirsty Sizzler.
We are at MtG Cabalcast on Patreon and Twitter, and we will see you next week.
See you guys.